If you're over 60 and you feel like your muscles just aren't what they used to be, even though you're eating enough protein, I'm about to show you exactly why that's happening and the 10 specific foods that fix it. All 10 named with exact amounts and exact timing. But first, one thing that's going to make every chicken breast and every scoop of protein powder you've ever eaten make a lot more sense. Most people believe, if I eat enough protein, my muscles will be fine. Protein is protein. That's true at 30. It is not true at 60. There's a number most doctors don't mention, and almost no nutrition video covers. That's called the Leucine threshold. If you don't cross it at every single meal, your body cannot build muscle, no matter how much protein you ate that day. At 30, you needed about 1 to 1.5 grams of leucine to flip the switch that builds muscle. After 60, that number jumps to 3 to 4 grams, almost triple. So if you're eating the same meals you ate at 35, your body might be getting plenty of protein on paper and still building zero new muscle because you never crossed the line. This isn't fringe theory. It's why nearly half of all American adults over 50 are protein deficient by the old standards, and why that climbs to 50%. In women over 71, most of them think they're eating fine. So here's what we're doing. 10 specific foods, ranked not by highest protein, but by how well they solve this exact problem. Crossing the 3 to 4 gram leucine line at the right time in a form your body can actually use after 60. Let's start with the food that doesn't just feed your muscles. It fixes the reason they stopped listening in the first place. Salmon, the food that resensitizes your muscle. Here's something almost nobody connects to muscle loss: inflammation. As we age, the body settles into inflammaging, low-grade, constant inflammation that doesn't go away. This inflammation blunts the exact cellular signals that tell your muscle to grow, and it's a core driver of anabolic resistance in the first place. Wild-caught salmon attacks this from two directions at once. It delivers complete protein, 24 to 28 grams, in a 4-ounce serving, plus a heavy dose of omega-3 fats, EPA and DHA, which get converted into compounds that calm that inflammation down. Here's the part that surprised researchers. Those omega-3 salts also physically integrate into the membrane of your muscle cells, making them more sensitive to insulin and more responsive to anabolic signals. In plain terms, salmon doesn't just feed the muscle. It makes the muscle better at listening again. A 6-year study tracking older adults, the Korean Frailty and Aging Cohort Study, found that people who regularly ate oily fish had 36% lower odds of developing sarcopenia and 50% lower odds of ending up with slow walking speed. One of the clearest warning signs of muscle decline. The target is 2 to 3 servings a week, 4 to 6 ounces each, ideally at dinner, giving you slow-releasing amino acids and anti-inflammatory fats working overnight, right when muscle is most vulnerable to breakdown. Fresh wild salmon can be pricey and seasonal. Frozen fillets or canned wild pink salmon get you the same biology for a fraction of the cost. Salmon resensitizes the muscle. But there's one food clinical researchers keep coming back to as the fastest way to actually cross that leucine line. Whey protein isolate, the fastest way across the threshold. Remember that number: 3 to 4 grams of leucine needed in one sitting to trigger muscle building after 60. Whey protein isolate is biochemically the most efficient food on this list at hitting it fast. A single 25-gram scoop delivers around 3 grams of leucine on its own, putting you right at the clinical threshold in a single serving, something most whole foods need 2 to 3 times the volume to achieve. Here's the mechanism. Whey digests fast, flooding your bloodstream with amino acids almost immediately, what researchers call hyperaminoadium. That flood of leucine acts like a key. It binds directly to a cellular sensor called cestrin-2, which unlocks a pathway called mTORC1, the master switch that tells your muscle cells to start building. In younger muscle, a small key fits the lock easily. In older muscle, the lock has gotten stiffer. That's anabolic resistance. You need a bigger key, faster, to force it open. This isn't theoretical. In a 12-week clinical trial, frail and malnourished older adults supplementing daily with whey isolate saw significant gains in both muscle mass and gait speed. They didn't just get stronger on paper, they walked faster. In real-world trials like ProMuscle, pairing a milk protein supplement with resistance training got older adults completing the chair rise test 3.3 seconds faster, with leg strength increasing by nearly 48 kilograms. The strong trial used twice-daily leucine-enriched whey alongside home exercise specifically to reduce fall risk, because weak legs are the single biggest predictor of a dangerous fall. The best window is 30 to 60 minutes after exercise, but it works just as well at breakfast, usually the meal where people fall furthest short of the threshold without realizing it. 1 to 2 scoops daily, 25 to 50 grams of protein is the target range. One caution: if you take levodopa for Parkinson's, space your dose at least 30 to 45 minutes before your protein, since high protein can block its absorption. So whey is the fastest key to the lock. But what protects you overnight when no one's drinking a protein shake? That comes from a food sitting in almost every refrigerator in America: cottage cheese and Greek yogurt. The overnight protection. Cottage cheese is made almost entirely of casein, and casein behaves completely differently in your stomach than whey does. The moment it hits stomach acid, casein clots into a gel. That gel slows everything down, releasing amino acids steadily into your bloodstream over 6 to 8 hours instead of all at once. That's exactly the window your body is undefended during sleep. Overnight, with no incoming nutrients, your body starts pulling amino acids back out of muscle tissue just to maintain basic functions elsewhere. Casein's slow release is specifically built to plug that gap. It keeps a steady stream of amino acids available, so your body has no reason to cannibalize muscle while you sleep. 1 to 1.5 cups of cottage cheese, eaten 30 to 60 minutes before bed, hits the clinically recommended 40-gram pre-sleep protein target. Greek yogurt works on a related but slightly different principle. It's a natural blend of fast-acting, residual whey and slow-acting casein, giving you a quick initial rise plus a longer tail. That combination, paired with the calcium and vitamin D already in dairy, is part of why a 2020 review of whole food interventions found that yogurt and cheese consistently improved both muscle mass and strength in adults over 50. And here's a number that might be the most surprising stat in this entire video. Cottage cheese costs roughly 2.5 cents per gram of protein. That makes it one of the cheapest, most clinically effective anti-catabolic foods that exists sitting in the dairy aisle of every grocery store in America for under $4 a tub. One practical note: commercial cottage cheese can run high in sodium, so if you're managing blood pressure or heart failure, look for low-sodium labeled varieties. So far we've covered the fast key, the slow drip, and the anti-inflammatory rebuild. Now let's talk about the everyday whole foods most people already have in their kitchen, because 2 of them are doing something for your muscle that goes far beyond protein alone. Lean ground beef and skinless chicken breast, the whole food workhorses. These are the 2 most familiar proteins in the American diet, and they remain effective for a reason that's easy to overlook. Skinless chicken breast has one of the best protein-to-calorie ratios on this list. A 4-ounce serving delivers 31 to 35 grams of protein for barely 150 calories. Almost impossible to overeat calories while still crossing your leucine threshold at a single meal. That matters because excess weight and muscle loss can happen at the same time. Researchers call it sarcopenic obesity, and chicken breast lets you sidestep that trap. Lean ground beef brings something different: creatine. Beef naturally contains about 1 gram of creatine per 200 grams, and creatine directly increases your muscle's phosphocreatine stores, the fuel for fast, explosive movement. That's the exact motion of pushing yourself up out of a chair or catching your balance on a step. Beef also delivers heme iron and B12, both critical for oxygen delivery to working muscle. Clinical comparisons back this up. Older adults eating beef as part of resistance training show greater gains in muscle size and strength than those on plant-only diets. Even with matched protein intake, one honest note: chewing. Dry chicken and tough steak can be genuinely difficult with dental issues or mild dysphagia. The fix isn't avoiding these foods, it's changing the prep. Shredded or slow-cooked chicken in broth and ground beef instead of steak deliver identical biology with none of the struggle. Both are best at lunch or dinner. 4 to 6 ounces of chicken, 3 to 4 ounces of beef, and both compete with levodopa absorption. So the same 1-hour spacing rule applies if relevant. Now, everything so far has been animal protein. What if dairy or meat isn't your thing, or your budget is tight? There's a plant option researchers were genuinely surprised to find performs on par with milk protein, soy protein isolate, and edamame, the plant-based surprise. Here's the myth this section breaks, that plant protein can't really build muscle in older adults. Whole plant foods do struggle here. They're wrapped in fiber and compounds called anti-nutritional factors that block some amino acid absorption. That part's true. But soy protein isolate isn't a whole food. It's been stripped of that fiber matrix. And once that barrier is gone, a 2024 meta-analysis found no measurable difference in muscle-preserving effectiveness between soy isolate and milk protein. In a 12-week trial with older adults in long-term care, 30 grams of daily soy protein produced significant improvements in muscle health and physical performance. There's a second layer. Soy appears to shift the gut microbiome toward bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, compounds that calm the same systemic inflammation that drives anabolic resistance. So soy isn't just a dairy substitute. It's quietly working the same pathway that makes salmon effective. Edamame, soy's whole food version, releases slower since its fiber matrix is intact, but a cup delivers 18 grams of protein, plus 8 grams of fiber, feeding beneficial gut bacteria, plus magnesium and potassium for muscle contraction and coordination. 1 scoop of soy isolate, about 25 grams of protein, works well in a morning smoothie. Edamame is an easy midday snack, steamed in minutes from the freezer aisle. One note: soy can interfere with thyroid medication absorption, so keep a 4-hour gap if that applies to you. And for value, canned tuna and dry lentils are the most cost-effective whole food proteins available, as little as 2 cents per gram for lentils. Tuna is zero prep and complete stick to chunk light, and 2 to 3 cans a week for mercury exposure. Lentils need pairing with a grain like rice to complete their amino acid profile, but 15 grams of fiber per cup make them one of the best foods here for long-term gut health. That's all 10, but there's one thing that matters more than which foods are on this list. It's when you eat them. And this is where even people eating perfectly healthy diets quietly sabotage their own muscle. The hidden mistake: protein timing. Picture a typical American day. A small bowl of cereal at breakfast, maybe 10 grams of protein. A modest lunch, 15 grams. Then a big dinner delivering 60 grams in one sitting. On paper, that's plenty of protein, maybe even hitting the recommended daily total. But your muscle doesn't care about your daily total. It cares about each individual meal. That 60-gram dinner blows past what your muscle can use in one sitting. The excess just gets burned for energy or stored as fat. Meanwhile, breakfast and lunch never come close to the 3 to 4 gram leucine threshold. So your muscle-building switch only flips once a day, at dinner if it flips at all. Clinical studies comparing this to an even distribution, roughly 25 to 30 grams of complete protein at every meal, found the even pattern consistently produced more muscle strength and mass in older adults. Same total daily protein. Completely different result. This single shift Spreading protein evenly instead of stacking it at dinner may be the most powerful, completely free change anyone watching can make starting at their very next meal. So here's everything this video covered. 10 foods: salmon for resensitizing inflamed muscle, whey for the fastest leucine spike, cottage cheese and Greek yogurt for overnight protection, chicken and beef for everyday whole food building, and soy, edamame, tuna, and lentils for plant-based and budget-friendly options. But the real lesson sits underneath all 10. You clicked on this video because you or someone you love has felt muscles getting weaker and wondered if that's just what happens after 60, if it's something you simply have to accept. It isn't. Muscle loss after 60 isn't really about how much protein you're eating. It's about whether you're crossing a specific biological threshold, -3 to 4 grams of leucine, at each individual meal, in a form your aging muscle can actually use. That's not a life sentence. That's a solvable math problem. And you now know exactly which 10 foods solve it, and exactly what amounts, at exactly what times. You came here for a list of foods. You're leaving with the actual reason your body stopped responding to food the way it used to, and the specific, practical fix starting with your very next meal. That's the difference between managing decline and actually rebuilding what you thought you'd lost for good.